Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheilla, and our story today is called Reggie's Idea. Well, it was getting toward the end of the year, and Bessie and Reggie were in the kitchen with their mother, and Mother kind of looked at them sadly, and she said, "I'm sorry, but there's no money for Christmas this year. There won't be any Christmas presents." And Bessie, she looked at Mother and she said, "Oh, Mother, you say that every year." Mother said, "Well, whatever, this year, it's true. It's been really hard this year, and we just don't have any extra money." Reggie and Bessie, they kind of looked at each other and thought, well, okay. So they went outside into the yard to think about what Mother had said. You know, this was kind of a serious thing. No Christmas. They sat down, and Reggie said, "It's not as bad as it sounds. I did want 2 new tires for my bicycle, but it's okay." And then he said, "But I don't want May and Flo to go without anything. They're little enough that they just wouldn't understand no Christmas." Bessie said, "I know. I did want that new set of books, but I can live without it. If we can just find some way to get something for our 2 little sisters." Well, Reggie, he was thinking, and he turned to Bessie and he said, "I have an idea." And Bessie said, "Oh, good. Tell me what it is." And Reggie said, "Okay, why don't we make our little sisters a dollhouse?" And Bessie said, "A dollhouse, they would love a dollhouse." They called their little sisters their baby sisters, but they really were a little bigger than that at this point. Reggie said, "What do you think of that? Shall we build them a dollhouse?" And Bessie said, "I wished you were building me a dollhouse. This will be wonderful." So Reggie said, "Come on then, we need to get started." So they went out to the woodshed, and once they were inside and it shut the doors so nobody saw where they were, Reggie started looking around the woodshed. And he went over in the corner and he picked up a big wooden box. And he said, "Hey, look at this, Bessie." And he was rubbing the sides of it, and he said, "Look how nice and smooth the wood is. This would make a perfect dollhouse. All I'd have to do is make a roof for it. And of course, a door and some windows." And Bessie said, "I think it'd be wonderful. Let's get busy." Well, Reggie, he had at school learned how to handle some wood tools, and so he set to work. He made a pointed roof for the top of that little dollhouse. He took a little saw and he very carefully cut windows, 2 in each end and 4 in the front. 1 over here, 1 over there, 1 up here, 1 up there, and a door in the bottom in the middle. Well, that was great, except that nobody would be able to get into it to play with it. So he cut the front of the house off, and then he cut it in half. And he went and looked through his dad's things. He found some hinges. And on each side of the house, he attached little hinges that made the front of the house be able to open just like this, so the two little girls could see all the rooms and play inside. Well, it took him a little while to do all that. Once he'd finished that, he got out some paint, and he painted the outside of the house with a red paint. Then he took a pencil or a pen, whichever he had, and he made little squares and made bricks all the way over the sides of the house, just like it was a brick house. Well, when he finished that, on that roof, he got some gray paint. This was paint that was left over from something else. And he painted the roof. When he got done, it looked like that the house had bricks and it had a slate roof. Well, Bessie was excited. Now all that Reggie had left to do was to make rooms inside. So he made walls, and then he put a floor on top of the bottom walls. He made an upstairs with bedrooms. He worked really hard to make it look like a house. Well, while he was doing all that, Bessie went in the house and went up into the attic and started looking through all the old stuff up there. And in the corner of the attic, she found rolls of wallpaper. And some of them, the patterns on them were small. So she had measured the house. And she cut off enough of that wallpaper to wallpaper the inside of the house so it would really look like a house. Then, in another little box, she found some old material, and she went through it trying to find something to make curtains out of. Sure enough, it wasn't long till she found what she thought was the perfect curtains for those windows. Enough for all 6 windows. Well, then she thought about the floor. The floor needed rugs on it. Then she found some material that was really thick. And she took that out to the woodshed, and with an old pair of scissors, she had measured out the rooms, and she cut that thick material, and Bessie put it down inside the walls on the floor and pushed it down in there, and it looked like the house had a cushy rug. Well, Reggie was pretty much done what he needed to do. He'd gotten the windows in. The story doesn't say what he made the windows out of. Maybe some kind of plastic that he had cut, because I doubt that he would have had glass. But he made something, and he made little window panes in it, and little pieces of wood he had cut out to make the window frames. And then he had sat down and he made a door, even with a tiny little doorknob that he made out of something. Well, Bessie was so tickled. It was wonderful. But it was missing something that all houses have. What do you suppose that was? There was no furniture. It looked like a beautiful new house, but there was no furniture. And Bessie turned to Reggie and she said, "It's bare. There's no furniture." So he went over to the other corner of the woodshed and he started working again. He found some not very thick pieces of wood and he cut a square. Then he cut 4 legs to make that square piece of wood into a dining room table. He took some sandpaper and he smoothed it all off. But then, of course, they needed chairs. So he made some little chairs for that table. Well, that wasn't so bad. So he looked at each room and decided what was going to be in those rooms. And he made little beds and, the little boxes of matches that you can pull the little box out and the matches are in there. Well, he found some old ones that didn't have any matches in them anymore. And he got some glue. He made a dresser. He glued those little boxes together. And then he found some little round things that kind of looked like knobs. And he hooked them on the front of those little boxes that could slide in and out. And you could take a hold of those little knobs and push them. And right inside were little drawers. It made a wonderful looking dresser. Well, every house needs a mirror. So he found a thin piece of tin. And with an old pair of scissors, he cut out an oval and he attached it to the wall. And the house had a mirror. Well, he went from room to room and made all the furniture. Well, while he was busy making furniture, Bessie made curtains for the windows. She took little bitty strips of wood and attached them, and she put her little curtains she had carefully sewed by hand, and she put them on those little pieces of wood, and then she took tiny pieces of ribbon and she tied the curtains back. She did all the things she knew to do, and Reggie finished all the rest of it. They looked inside, they opened the front of it and they shut it. They opened the little door and looked in. It was wonderful. Now, all they had to do was keep it a secret till Christmas. Well, they put it back in the corner of the woodshed, where hopefully nobody would find it. And they shut the woodshed, and they went about to do their other things, secretly waiting for the time to pass till it was time for Christmas. Christmas Eve came, but they were a family that had always opened presents on Christmas morning. So Reggie and Bessie got up really early Christmas morning, and they snuck out to the woodshed, and with one holding each side, they lifted that dollhouse out. They set it down and they shut the door to the woodshed, and they quietly went into the house and up the stairs, and they went into the 2 little girls' bedroom, and they were sound asleep. Reggie went, shh. And Betsy nodded her head yes. And they carefully carried that house in, and they set it on the bottom of the little girl's bed. Well, all went fine until Bessie accidentally caught her foot on the iron foot of the little girl's bed, and it went clunk. And little May, she sat up startled in her bed, and she saw that house, and she went, oh! And when she went, oh! Flo woke up. She sat in bed and she rubbed her eyes, and she looked at that house and she said, a dolly house, a beautiful dolly house. And then both girls saw Bessie and Reggie standing there at the end of the bed. And Flo said, is it your dolly house, Bessie? And Bessie said, no. It's yours and May's dolly house, just for the two of you. Don't you know that today is Christmas? Both little girls went, Christmas! And Bessie and Reggie said, this is for you. We wanted you to have a nice surprise for Christmas. This is for you to play with. Well, both girls were extremely excited. Reggie and Bessie went down the stairs, leaving the two little girls to figure out all the furniture and things in that house. And as they were going down the stairs, they both realized how happy they were. They found out giving to somebody else is even much more fun than getting anything. They didn't even mind. They didn't even think about the fact that they didn't have any Christmas, because they had made Christmas for their two little sisters, and they were so happy. Do you know that Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive? And that's the lesson that Bessie and Reggie learned. Thank you, boys and girls. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.